They laughed. They always do. At first, when I started seeing patterns in the chaos, when I connected dots they couldn't even see, they called it madness. Whispers behind closed doors, side eyes in crowded rooms, smiles that dripped with pity. Obsessed. Delusional. A ticking bomb, is what they said. But what they never understood is that the storm in my head wasn't noise. It was blueprints. It was design. It was control. While they wasted their breath chasing comfort, I carved plans into silence. While they drank to forget, I studied to remember. Every detail, every betrayal, every lie wrapped in a smile. They thought I was losing it. They thought I was cracking. But tell me, what do you know about pressure? If you've never had to swallow the weight of being different in a world that fears anything it can't control, I didn't break. I transformed. They saw a man alone. In the dark, what they missed was that the dark was mine. Listen to me. It spoke back. They played checkers. I was designing chessboards. Every piece, every move, every sacrifice, calculated, predicted, engineered. They couldn't understand the silence, the sleepless nights. It's the obsession with detail, but madness. Madness isn't screaming in the streets. Madness is staying silent when your soul is on fire. Madness is pretending to be okay while your mind races through simulations, outcomes, disasters, victories before the world even sees the first sign. Madness is genius. Drenched in loneliness, I tried. I tried to explain, to soften it, to make it digestible for their fragile minds. But they don't want truth. They want comfort. They want easy answers and pretty endings. I wasn't born to give them. That, you see, when you start asking questions that tear apart the lies they built their lives on, you don't get applause, you get exile, friends. Turned critics, family, turned strangers. You stop being one of us and start being one of them. Dangerous, unstable, mad. But let me tell you something about being called insane. Voices get quieter, the rooms get colder, but your mind gets sharper. Like a blade honed in betrayal. And in that silence, I began to see everything. Every smile meant to distract. Every hand built to betray. Every system designed to fail you the moment you stopped playing along. And I smiled back, because while they laughed, I was building in blood, in silence. Total clarity. While they were busy laughing at the lightning, I was bottling the storm, and now those same mouths that mocked me speak my name with reverence. Now they study my past like prophecy. Now they call it brilliance. But let's not rewrite history. They didn't believe in vision. They believed in comfort. They didn't want leaders. They wanted puppets. And when someone shows up who doesn't kneel, who doesn't ask permission, who dares to think past the lines they drew, they don't get applause. They get labeled. But remember this, they called it madness. Because it scared them. Because deep down they knew. They knew that if I ever stopped doubting myself, if I ever stopped apologizing for being more, that nothing would stop me. And now they pray they'd listened. Now they wish they'd understood. Now, they call it a master plan. You only saw the smirk. Never the sleepless nights. Never the blood beneath the grin. Never the moments I sat in silence, wishing the world would just stop spinning. Just for a second. Because holding the weight of a vision that no one understands isn't heroic. It's hell. They think I was born this way, but the truth, I was. Carved by betrayal, by silence, by promises that turned to knives. I trusted people who looked me in the eye while holding the blade behind their back. I opened doors only to be dragged out and crucified for dreaming differently, for daring to. Believed that I could build something greater than the cage they handed me. I had mentors who fed me lies and blamed me when the poison burned. I had friends who cheered when I bled, and lovers who only stayed long enough to taste the fire, then ran when it got too bright. But no one saw that. No one saw the pieces I picked up at night. No one saw the way my hands shook. When I stared into the mirror and barely recognized what was left, I wasn't always like this. There were nights I wanted to erase myself, not because I was weak, but because I was tired. Tired of explaining my silence, tired of shrinking for comfort, tired of being told that my intensity was too much. I begged the world to accept me, to see me, to understand that I wasn't trying to burn it all down. I was trying to build something that wouldn't collapse. But they don't hear ambition, they only hear noise. They don't see focus, they see obsession. They don't recognize fire until it burns them. So I learned to stop reaching out, stop softening the edges, to stop offering explanations to people who only came close to twist the knife deeper. I stopped bleeding. For them. I stopped breaking myself just to fit in rooms where my light was too loud, and when they couldn't understand me, they labeled me arrogant, broken, dangerous. So I embraced it. If they wanted a monster, I drew the fangs myself. If they feared the fire, I made it my home. Because I realized something: you can suffer quietly, or you can rise loudly. And I chose to rise. I turned my scars into armor. Every betrayal, a steel plate. Every heartbreak, sharpened edge. Every failure, weapon they didn't see coming. You don't get to this place by being soft. You don't build legacy with handshakes and small talk. You build it with pain. Build it with silence. You build it with the kind of madness that terrifies the mediocre. And now they say I'm resilient. Now they say I'm unstoppable. Now they say they always knew. But I remember the cold shoulders. I remember the fake concern. I remember the eyes that rolled when I spoke of things they couldn't comprehend. They saw calm. But inside, I was a storm begging for war. I wore a smile, but behind it was a battlefield. Not of others, but of me versus me, and I won. Every single night I wanted to disappear, but chose instead to become someone they'd never forget. So the next time they ask how I became like this, tell them the truth. Tell them I bled for this. Tell them I broke and rebuilt. Tell them I walked through hell and memorized every step. So I'd never get lost again? They think this is ego? No, this is resurrection. This is the monster they made when they tried to bury a mind too wild for chains. They wanted me tamed. They wanted me quiet. They wanted me broken. But I refused to. Kneel, and now I stand. Not because I never fell, but because I never stayed down while they chased applause. I built a war in silence, while they were busy performing for the world. I vanished into the shadows, not to hide, but to observe. They thought I disappeared. They thought they'd broken me. But what they never realized was that I was never lost. I was planning every humiliation archived, every betrayal recorded, every scar measured and marked. I wasn't healing. I was sharpening. Because the game they played, it was always too small. It's too loud, too desperate. They played to be seen. I played to win. I didn't waste time explaining myself. I didn't argue. I didn't scream for validation. I just watched and waited. You see, I chose the long game. It's the one that requires silence, the one that demands patience, the one that separates the impulsive from the immortal. And in that stillness, I learned everything: their strengths, their weaknesses, patterns, every crack in their armor, every blind spot in their strategy. I mapped it all, quietly, relentlessly. They thought I was spiraling, but I was calculating. They thought I lost my mind. No, I weaponized it. I stopped asking why me, and started asking how far can I go, and the answers, they terrified me at first. But then I realized I was made for this, because only those who've been torn apart know how to build themselves back without missing a single piece. They laughed when I started aligning the chaos. They called it obsession. They called it paranoia. But now they call it brilliance. Now they call it strategy. They don't laugh anymore, because every insult they threw wasn't wasted. It was moved. Every doubt they cast wasn't ignored. It was placed. Every scar they gave me wasn't just a wound, it was a piece on the board. Every insult, pawn moved forward. Every scar, a rook positioned for the kill. Every lie, a bishop ready to strike diagonally, quietly, unpredictably. They never understood the game because they never saw it. But I saw it all. I saw the king they worshipped, fragile, weak, guarded by Yesman. I saw the queens who moved fast but without direction. And I became the board. Let them come for me. Let them try to predict me. Let them move. Every move they make leads them closer to the trap they never saw coming, because I didn't build a plan. I built a maze, a design so intricate they'd mistake it for fate. But it was me. Every outcome, every reaction, every fall they thought was chance was mine. While they boasted, I planted. While they danced for the crowd, I dug tunnels beneath their empire. While they chased trends, I studied time, and now they say I'm 10 steps ahead, but I'm not. I'm just not playing the same game they thought they were. Players, they thought they were clever, but they never realized they were always the pieces. And I was always the mastermind behind the curtain. I stopped waiting for justice. I stopped begging for fairness. I built my own, and I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because they needed to see. They needed to understand what happens when you corner someone who builds castles in darkness and doesn't need light to rule. This is what vengeance looks like when it's calculated. It's cold and patient. This is what happens when madness evolves into precision. So let them call it dangerous. Let them call it cruel. But know this blueprint, this empire, this plan they now worship, it was born in silence, built in pain, perfected in isolation. And now they call it genius. Now they call it unstoppable. Now they call it a master plan, but I'll never forget what they called it when it was just me, alone in the dark, mapping every move. They called it madness. They were wrong. They used to whisper, "That's the mad one, the fool, the outcast, the broken mind with wild dreams and wild eyes." They called it madness. They laughed at the fire in me. But now they don't laugh. Now they don't whisper. They don't even breathe when I walk into the room, because the storm they mocked, it's the silence they now fear. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't explain. I just stopped listening. And when I did, the noise faded. The doubt faded. They faded. I didn't raise my voice. I raised empires. In the shadows. In silence. With precision. While they waited for me to break, I was building. While they smiled at my scars, I was sharpening my mind. They feared what I might become. Now, they face what I am. You see, revenge isn't rage. It isn't chaos. It isn't loud. Revenge is order, discipline, rebirth. Revenge. It's looking them in the eye without a flicker of hate and watching them fall apart. Because deep down, they know ... they deserve what's coming. And I deserve this throne, they used to say. Calm down, you're overthinking. Now they ask, how did you see it coming? They used to mock the way I stayed alone. Now they hire guards to protect them from the very silence they once called weakness. Funny how quickly fear rewrites the story. Every step I take now, they flinch. Every decision I make. They scramble to adapt. They watch me rise with wide eyes and tighter throats. Because they remember. They remember the cracks in my voice, the trembling hands, the moments I almost broke. And now there's no cracks left to crawl through, no tremble in my grip, no hesitation in my soul. I am not who I was. They called it madness. Now they call it leadership. They called me unhinged. Now they call me unstoppable. They called it a fantasy. Now they call it a master plan. The same ones who laughed at my blueprints now build their empires off my shadows. The same ones who rolled their eyes now lower them when I enter. The same ones who pushed me down now pray I don't return the favor. I don't need to threaten them. I exist, and that is threat enough. I became everything they feared, not by accident, not by mistake, but by design. They taught me pain. I turned it into calculation. They gave me silence. I turned it into focus. They left me with nothing. Built everything. I didn't need applause. I needed time. Time to observe, to rebuild, To let the fire settle into something. It's colder. Something that doesn't rage anymore. It plots. Now watch them. They imitate my discipline. They copy my tone. Mimic the very madness they mocked. But they'll never own it. Because they didn't earn it. Only those who've bled in silence know how to move in power. I was the lesson. Now I'm the rule. I was the target. Now I pulled the strings. I was the broken chess piece. Now I move kings and queens across the board. Every outcome was calculated. Every silence was loaded. Every fall I took was a setup for this final move. And now. No, I never wanted their pity. I never needed their approval. All I needed was for them to doubt me long enough for me to finish the blueprint. Let them look. Let them wonder. Let them fear. Because this is what they tried to stop. And it's too late now. They built a world to break me. I learned how to bend it. They made rules to contain me. I rewrote the game. They thought they were kings. Now they serve the architect of their downfall. Me, this is the day they felt fear. Real fear. The kind that doesn't shout. It stares. The kind that doesn't chase. It waits. The kind that doesn't break the door. It already has the key. Let them remember the name they used to mock. Let them remember the laugh they once silenced. Let them remember the flame they tried to smother. Because now, it burns quietly, but it burns everything. They called it madness. Now they call it destiny. They used to flinch at the mention of my name, whispered it in fear, laughed behind locked doors, or wrote me off as delusional, dangerous, mad. But now they quote me. Now they dissect every move I made, like it was prophecy. Now they mimic the chaos they once feared, as if touching madness might make them divine. It's funny how that works. Back then, I was a warning. Today, I'm the blueprint. They trace the edges of my fury like it's sacred. They study my scars like they hold secrets to immortality. They steal my rhythm. But they'll never hear the music the way I did because they didn't bleed for it. I did. I didn't change the world to fit in. I shattered it, crushed it into ash, and with blood-stained hands, I rebuilt it in my image. This empire, it wasn't gifted, was clawed from the bones of those who doubted me. Brick by bitter brick, I made a monument to everything they said I couldn't be. Call it rage. Call it revenge. Call it whatever helps them sleep. But me, I call it a masterpiece. Because chaos was never the downfall. It was the strategy. I was playing chess while they were throwing stones. I moved in silence while they screamed for validation. I let them think they were winning. Let them crown themselves kings while I planned their fall. And now, checkmate, I stand alone. Not because I couldn't belong, but because no throne ever fit a god in disguise. No applause. No parade, just silence. And the sound of history rewriting itself around me. This isn't redemption. This isn't revenge. This is revelation. I am not their villain anymore. I am their inevitability. They tried to erase me, so I carved my name. Into the ruins, they tried to bury me, so I grew roots that broke the earth. They tried to shame me, so I wore their hatred like armor, and now they teach my madness in classrooms. They mimic my moves like scripture. They kneel where they once stood tall. They called it madness. Now they call it a Masterplan. Let that echo. Let it burn through their skulls. Let it haunt the halls they built to forget me. Because this isn't the end. This is the monument. The final move. The last laugh. The truth they were too weak to see. They called it madness. Now they call it a Masterplan in me. I don't need a crown. I already made the world kneel.